Thank you. It is 24 minutes to 9. The latest plan for sending migrants to Rwanda seems to involve British lawyers being sent there first to convince our High Court that their judicial system is fair. This concrete proposal seems to suggest that a treaty with Rwanda is coming soon, perhaps even this week, a treaty that would allow the government to say to the courts here that Rwanda is a safe place, with the prospect then that the European Court of Human Rights can either be sidelined entirely or through legislation given a reduced role. Let us talk to Martin Howe, KC, who is a former member of the Commission on a UK Bill of Rights back in 2012, and Baroness Lady Chakrabati as well, the Labour peer, barrister, human rights activist, both of them on the line. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Martin Howe, first of all, on this plan to send lawyers to Rwanda, do you think it could work, and in what way might it work? Might it be convincing to a court?
Hello, sorry, I've got a lot of voices from your studio on my line.
Well, let's just try to fix that. Can you hear me clearly now?
I can hear you clearly now.
Jolly good. Yeah. OK, let's try again then. So on the limited plan at the moment, before we get to wider things, the limited plan to send British lawyers to Rwanda to make sure that what is happening there is fair, do you think it could work? And if so, how?
It could work. It might work. The difficulty with it, of just doing that and without the what will be in the emergency legislation, is that almost certainly it will be challenged on a similar basis as the previous challenge. And one can look forward to many, many, many months, if not years, of legal proceedings during which they won't be able to implement the Rwanda plan.
Right. So you're someone who is in favour of the Rwanda plan, but still thinks that the sending of British lawyers to Rwanda would not be a game changer, as it were.
It wouldn't be an immediate game changer. It might solve the problem with the Supreme Court judgment, depending upon the precise arrangements that are in the treaty. But the problem is, it would almost certainly be challenged as to whether or not it had solved it. That would lead to delays. And we'd be looking at many, many, many more months, if not years, of further delays before such challenges were resolved, and until which it would be very difficult for any flights to Rwanda to go ahead.
And you, presumably, Baroness Chakrabarti, would say that those challenges would be fair and reasonable. You would want it to be challenged.
Well, just to be clear, the Supreme Court made findings of evidence, and that evidence was very much persuaded by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, that found that under the existing international treaties, in particular the Refugee Convention, Rwanda's system is not safe for asylum seekers. That's currently the asylum seekers who are making their way directly to Rwanda without this dodgy British deal being implemented. It seems to me that if the cure that Mr. Sunak's government prescribes is to send British lawyers to help the Rwandans improve their systems for existing asylum seekers in Rwanda, it would take, as Martin Howe suggests, a considerable period of time for that formula to be tested. It could be years. Now, I have an ethical problem with first world countries behaving this way and palming off their convention responsibilities on Rwanda or other developing countries. But as a matter of law and evidence, this would certainly be no quick fix.
Right. OK, so let's park the idea then of the British lawyers going, which is something we've been talking about today, because the government seems to be itself talking about it today. But go to the wider question, Martin Howe. If Rishi Sunak wants to get people on planes to Rwanda soon, what does he need to do?
Well, can I first say I have an ethical problem with encouraging a scenario where people are encouraged to make dangerous journeys across the English Channel, often with children, because we have lost control of illegal immigration into our country. But what he would have to do in order to get the flights going, in order to get the scheme working, which would deter people from arriving in the first place, is it would have to be legislation that would allow Parliament taking the decision it would allow illegal arrivals to be sent to Rwanda while excluding possible challenges under the Human Rights Act and other legislation.
And should those possible challenges only be excluded when they're specifically about asylum claims, or are we talking about a wider withdrawal?
I would have thought, no, I would have thought it's to do with arrivals who are illegal migrants. I don't think under contemplation it is a question of wider withdrawal from the European Convention.
Right.
And indeed, it's not planned to withdraw from the Convention.
So I'm guessing that Martin is suggesting ousting the jurisdiction of both domestic courts, like our Supreme Court, and of course the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Now that would be an abrogation of domestic constitutional principle and international law, and would turn us into a pariah state, like Russia, that was expelled from the Council of Europe last year. That seems to me to be a very, very major step, and not one that's in the best interests of the United Kingdom or the world
Martin,
in these
Howe,
very, very difficult times.
Let's let Martin Howe answer that.
I think I disagree with all three of Shami's propositions. First of all, for Parliament to exercise its sovereignty with this kind of legislation would be entirely in accordance with our Constitution and its principles. Secondly, the problem has arisen largely because of judicial activism by the European Court of Human Rights at Strasbourg. It's not actually the Convention itself that's the problem. It's a series of cases that they've created. And the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court applied a test which derives directly from the Strasbourg court cases. And they were not invited to do it.
Not exclusively, of course, because if you study the Supreme Court
Lady Chakrabati,
decision,
just come back on that and then we'll finish. Lady Chakrabati.
No.
Hang on a second, Martin Howe, and then you can have one word as well.
To be clear, the Supreme Court decision was based on the factual evidence of the situation in Rwanda, and as a matter of law, it was based not predominantly on the ECHR, but also on the Refugee Convention and various domestic statutes, including conservative ones that implement the Refugee Convention.
Hang on a second, Martin Howe. That's the point, isn't it, about the Supreme Court judgment? It's not just based on the European Convention. It is based much more widely on international law. We would be getting ourselves into hot water with potential outcomes that at the moment we don't want to think about. Isn't that right?
No, that's not right. The specific test they applied arises directly from Strasbourg court jurisprudence and the fact it was determined by a court rather than determined by an administrative tribunal, which might have better foreign relations expertise than a domestic court. Those derive directly from the Strasbourg case law. They're not in any of the other international instruments that are cited. They would not present a barrier against.
Well, we're out of time, but let's see what the government come up with today when it comes to the sending of lawyers, which is of course a much smaller question, but an important one. And then we will return, no doubt, to the wider ones. Martin Howe, Casey, and Lady Chakrabati as well. Thank you.
At 8:45, let's turn to the special plane ready at Edinburgh Airport to carry